Hey listeners, we're nearing the end of our 15th anniversary fundraising campaign, and we need your help to meet our goal. This campaign offers you a chance to win a unique food and music experience in one of the most exciting cities in America. Here's how it works. Donate to HRN and you'll be entered to win dinner for two and 2 tickets to a concert in one of 8 amazing cities: New York, Los Angeles, Philadelphia, Nashville, Las Vegas, Charleston, Ardmore, Pennsylvania, and Asheville. All donations support our work educating food system storytellers. And when you donate, you can choose one of those cities and you'll be entered to win dinner and 2 tickets to a show. So help us reach our goal and enter to win dinner and a show in the city of your choice. Check out heritageradionetwork.org/15 to donate and enter to win today. That's heritageradionetwork.org/15. Thank you.
This episode is presented by Henry's Wine and Spirit.
This week on Meat and Three, we're exploring food for the eyes, how the art and culinary worlds collide.
It's incredibly elaborate. It's a feast for the eyes, a banquet dinner with garnished ham, turkey, and an array of accompaniments.
We shot baguettes with paint dripping off of them with the blue, white, and red from the French flag.
Oh, what did the student tell me? They said the camera eats first. And it's so true. It's so true.
Tune in to Meat and Three, HRN's weekly food news roundup, wherever you listen to podcasts.
Welcome to the Grape Nation, your weekly wine journey. Our guests are Valter Fissore and Brahm Callahan. We'll talk to Valter and Brahm about the wines of Barolo, Elvio Cogno, and more. We'll taste, I thought we were going to taste a Barolo, but Valter brought in 4 bottles, so we'll taste those during this show. I'm your host, Sam Ben Ruby. Stay with us for the Grape Nation on the Heritage Radio Network. We bring wine to the people. Valter Fissore is the co-owner and winemaker at Elvio Cogno, a multi-generational winery in the Novello commune in the Piedmont region of Italy. Valter had worked side by side with his father-in-law, Elvio Cogno, for over 25 years, producing iconic Barolos before Elvio's passing in 2016. Now Valter carries on the tradition with his wife, Nadia. Brahm Callahan is a master sommelier and corporate beverage director for the Himmel Hospitality Group, a leading restaurant group in Boston and now in New York City. Welcome to the Grape Nation, Valter and Brahm.
It's great to be here.
Thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much.
I want to get into a lot of things today, but before we get into anything, I want people to know who they're listening to. So, Valter, we're going to start with you. Tell me about your journey in life and wine that got you to where you are today, which is basically running the winery. Where did it start? And don't start like in kindergarten. When did the wine thing start?
Thank you for the question. To be a great winemaker today, you need to be very modern, because you need to follow many aspects, not only the viticulture, the cellar, but also the marketing and the sales. That is not easy, but with great passion we can follow everything and produce great wines. What is most important is to remain viticulture and put always the hand into the wine.
But the question was, how did you get into wine? You know, when did you start? Where was it in your family? Did you decide you wanted to become a winemaker? I mean, where was that moment where everything ascended after that?
Yes, this is a complicated question, but beautiful question, because I decided to become winemaker for passion, thanks to, first of all, my grandfather, Eugenio, that introduced me when I was a child to going in the vineyard, to follow the winemaking. And then, thanks to my father-in-law, Elvio Cogno, I learned to make great wines, but most of all, he transmitted me a great passion about wine.
Right.
That need for to follow the situation, the complicated situation, to make a unique product like the wine.
Right. Brahm, let's talk about what you were doing before you became a master som, why you decided to become a master som, and currently you're overseeing a large restaurant group. When was that wine moment, and when was that moment that you decided you were going to dedicate your life to the master som exam?
Yeah, it was kind of a happy accident, I guess. So I had put myself through undergraduate and graduate school working in restaurants, and had always had lots of jobs, and I'd worked in a wine shop starting when I was literally 17, and learned a lot about wine, but never thought I was going to do it professionally. And I finished my master's degree, and I was going into my doctorate program at Boston College, and I was running a wine program full-time and going to grad school full-time, and I was having way more fun selling wine, and I was traveling and enjoying it. And it wasn't like I wasn't enjoying the graduate work. There was just pieces of it that I really enjoyed and pieces that I didn't.
Right.
And my graduate advisor could see that I was having more fun at work than I was in school.
Really? That's a good graduate advisor.
She's great, yeah. And I still see her and talk to her somewhat regularly. So she said to me, listen, your doctorate will always be here. You can always come back and do it. Why don't you see if this works for you, and go try the wine thing out. And so it was at that point where I decided to at least become somewhat serious about wine. So a friend of mine talked me into sitting the advanced exam, and I've been working in restaurants at that point for probably 10 plus years, 12 years, working with wine for 10 years. And I would say accidentally passed the advanced exam the first time I sat. It's better to be lucky than good, right? And I had a lot of, I think I got, if passing was a 60, I think I got a 60. Like, that was what it was. But I got over, and yeah, hey man, C's and D's get degrees. So I got over, and then was faced with the reality that I now had the opportunity to sit the Master Sommelier exam, which is just in itself is a very small group of people that could even get the chance to do that. And when I sat, I thought I was prepared, and it slapped me around pretty hard. And I was doing other things. So I was running a big wine program at that point. I was running a food and wine festival at that point as well. Yeah, just doing a lot of things, and not necessarily giving the exam the respect that it really deserved, because it's a much hard. I'm just used to being good at stuff, and it was one of those things that just knocked me around. So took me 3 attempts. I essentially was on the layaway plan where I passed a piece every year. And then after 3 tries, I was able to get over. And then since then have really kind of expanded my role in overseeing a number of restaurants, a lot of mentoring, traveling, teaching, that kind of stuff.
When did you get to Himmel?
So I've actually worked for Himmel Hospitality Group since 2006.
Oh, so that's a long time. I didn't realize that.
Yeah. So, and when I was in grad school, I was working for them.
Right.
And so
they saw you grow.
Yeah, they've seen me. I mean, I started as a food runner in their restaurant.
Right.
So they have seen me do pretty much everything on the front
They
end
must
side.
like you. All right, so that's who we're talking to. Now, Valter.
Yes.
No one knows Barolo as well as you, or you know Barolo as well as anyone. So what I want you to do is tell me a little about the region before we talk specifically about the wines. I mean, you've worked 25 vintages with your father-in-law. You're in Rivera, one of the 11 communes in Barolo. Tell me about what you deal with. Tell me about climate. Tell me about the geography. Tell me a little about terroir. The grape varietals are easy because it's fairly simple, but just give me a little, education on, where you're growing and making your wines.
Yeah, Barolo is something that is in our DNA, because the family work behind this wine since for generation, and for this reason we make a road in these years, in this long time, to continue to produce wine with great tradition, with great personality. We live in a huge country, in a huge place that is Langhe, where you, for this I feel me very, very lucky, because the nature has the possibility to make a wine so magic like the Barolo and the Barbaresco.
So you're dealing with a Nebbiolo grape.
Right.
What kind of climates, soils? Are we are we on hilly slopes, the right facing? I mean, how are you situated?
Yeah, Langhe is a place that the Nebbiolo grape find the right condition to grow in the better way possible. Is a very unique grape for this characteristic that you cannot plant everywhere. Is a wine that needs a special soil condition.
Which is what? I mean, what's the composition? Limestone?
Limestone clay, not too much sand, but not only. There is a combination through soil and microclimate. And it's only in this situation that Nebbiolo find the right condition to get the best characteristic. Nebbiolo needs great excursion of temperature through night and day to have a perfect maturation. Is a wine that like and need sun, so the exposure is really important. South exposure, southeast, southwest, but south.
Is it generally dry?
Yeah, dry, but needs water, because we don't allow to make irrigation in Piedmont, in Langhe.
You have the neblina, the fog, so that gives you.
Nebbiolo is mean from nebbia, but from the time that we pick the grape, because it's the later harvest of the region. But need water that comes from the winter, the snowy winter that we have in Piedmont. Because Langhe is on the border to the Liguria, where you have the sea, and the influence of the sea on our microclimate is quite important, because the warm air comes from the sea, from the Liguria, and meet the cold air from the north of the Alps, and the snow a lot for this reason.
Now, are we talking Langhe in general? Barolo or Rivera? I mean, those influences are hitting the area.
Rivera is very influenced about the snow.
Okay. So your water comes from the winter and the snow.
380 meters is quite high elevation, but all Langhe is influenced about this climate condition.
Right.
Because the soil is different, but not too much different.
Right.
Barbaresco and Barolo. In Barbaresco you have more sandy soil. In Barolo you have more limestone. But what is important that this climate get to have enough water that for support the maturation and the growing season in the hot summer, because we have hot summer in Piedmont.
But generally speaking, even in the hot summer, the winter snow providing the water is enough for
because the difference through the rain and the snow is quite heavy.
Right.
Because the rain falling down in the hills, because we have steep hills, and make erosion only, and don't enter in the deep layer of the soil. But the snow melt, and the water can enter into the deep layer and remain for all season and helps the roots to grow, of course.
It really is a very unique place where if you stand in Rivera where he is, you can see the Alps on one side and you can see the ocean on the other side. And you think about that combination coming together, it's very unique.
So, Brahm, tell me about Rivera, which is where they grow their wines. It is one of the less recognized crus, and certainly not celebrated like some of the other ones. Is that true?
Well, I think the conversation about Barolo in general. So Barolo's been around for a very long time, and it's been very well respected as one of the great wines of Italy for kind of as long as we talked about great wine in Italy. Barolo and Barbaresco were always kind of the quote unquote king and queen, right? But there was a mentality, and it was just based on how you would farm and make wine 50 or 60 years ago, where there wasn't, even though there were named vineyards, there wasn't a mentality where you would put that on the label. You would make a Barolo from all of these sites that you had and kind of combine them together. And it wasn't until, I don't know, really 40 years ago, 35 years ago, where you start to see people putting these crus, what we're calling now crus, or delineated sites on the labels, and starting to bring in the idea where site is really important, kind of following that Burgundian model where you talk about the Premier crus and the Grand crus, and there's definitely the equivalent quality in Piedmont as well. But one of the things that makes Piedmont, I think specifically, and we talk about Barolo and Barbaresco overall, different, in the Langhe you have Nebbiolo, but you also have Barbera and Dolcetto, and a host of other grapes, right? In Burgundy, you're really talking about Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. So there's not the diversity of plantings across the hill and elevation. And so with Nebbiolo, it always kind of migrated to these top sites because they would be slightly more favorable. And you would have Barbera or Dolcetto planted in other places. But as we've really grown to understand viticulture, soil types, rootstock selections, we've realized that there are a range of expressions across a slope like Rivera, which is a very big vineyard site. I mean, it's huge. But there are sweet spots in Rivera that are as good a dirt as anywhere in Piedmont or Barolo.
Well, the implication wasn't that it was inferior to anywhere.
Right.
It doesn't get the love.
But it was one of those sites that I think was misplanted. A lot of it was
right.
There were people planting Barbera there or Dolcetto there, and because they weren't really understanding the rootstock selections or the clonal selections or viticultural management in the same way that we do now. Yeah.
Both of you answer this. So in the past 25, 30 years, that's been addressed, right? You've taken all the sites and made all the proper plantings, or even longer ago, right?
Right.
So every parcel is properly placed now.
Yeah. The historic memory is really important about that.
Yeah. I mean, do you agree?
I mean, it's one of the things that I really respect about Valter is that he is a very technically trained winemaker and understands all of the science in both the winery and in viticulture, but is doing that to make sure that he is able to let the site really reflect itself, not to input his own thumbprint on the wines. And I think that's where we've seen a shift in Piedmont, and one of the reasons that Rivera is now starting to really be put towards the forefront is because as we realize when you really dial into clonal selection, which Valter does, which now has become a cool thing to do in Piedmont, and there's so many more people that are talking about clonal selection as we start to bring those things back, but it's been something that you've been doing for 20 years, right?
So
20 longer, 25
So Valter,
years.
is that a modernist approach, or is that the traditional approach? I mean, because people will say there's a modern style, there's a traditional style. I mean, where are we at on that sort of range? Yeah.
Okay.
Because Brahm said you have a very keen technical sense towards that.
For me, it's quite reductive talking about modern and traditional, especially in the wines of this period of the world. For me, the wines my wines are postmodern.
Postmodern. Okay.
Yes. Because are full of tradition, but also are right for the day that we are living now. Wines that are full of elegance, wines with great character, very pure, wines that have a great pair with the kind of food that people eat today.
So you're taking a great grape, a great area, great sites,
Yeah,
and you're doing everything best possible.
I think it's the problem with modern versus traditional when we talk about Piedmont is you're talking.
Well, it's like
traditionally-
natural wine. It's a pretty open moniker, but you got to go with it.
Well, it kind of is and it isn't. It was traditionally the Baroli boys when you were talking about them using small barrels versus big barrels and new French oak versus big neutral botti. That was the modern versus traditional. But I think when I say he has a very high level understanding of modern winemaking and viticulture, it's so that he can respect the tradition and match it to the site. And I think what's really great about Piedmont right now is you have all of this outside perspective, but they're now, rather than trying to change themselves to become somebody else, they're using the understanding of the technology, the science, to highlight their terroir rather than try to make it into something that it's not.
Is that a generational thing? Is that the Valters and the next generation? Is that their preference, or not necessarily that alone?
I think it's happening on a global scale. I mean, you can certainly speak to it in Piedmont, but like you look at the clonal selection in Burgundy, like that's a thing that wasn't really so much part of their viticultural expressions 50 years ago. But now you talk about 667 or 115 or all these different clones of Pinot Noir, and that's what winemakers are looking at, trying to match it to the best kind of site expression.
But my question is, who's doing that? Is it the next generation that cares about that? Because the older guys obviously didn't do it.
Yeah. I don't know. What do you think, Valter? I mean,
For me, I try to do wines for the new generation. In fact, I produce one Barolo that is for that, because I want to get the possibility, first of all, that the new wine lovers start to drink Barolo not after 20 years, but sometimes earlier.
That's important.
Of Cascina Nuova.
Cascina Nuova.
Okay.
Yeah. And but as I speak today with other people, that Barolo Ravera, for example, that 2015 we opened a bottle this morning, and the wine this is the later vintage released.
It's the current vintage?
The current vintage,
right.
Yeah, sorry. And when in past you open a bottle like this and it's so approachable, so drinkable.
Even though it's young.
Yeah.
And Brahm, it could take what kind of bottle age?
Well, I mean, that's the conversation, I think, that, traditionally, like we have the fortunate ability to sell wines from, even from Elvio Cogno from the 70s and 80s, that the wines were, when they were under the Macchiarini label, were very traditional, and those wines are still very much alive. But when they were young, they were probably very tannic and very unapproachable, and not having the same, elegance right off of the bat because of the way they were being made and the just kind of what was tradition then. And I think that I don't necessarily think that these wines are any less ageable, in all honesty. I think it's the approachability.
More approachable earlier.
Yeah, and
which I think is important for new drinkers.
The reality is Barolo is always a food wine.
Yeah.
Right, it just is. It's never going to be a sit-and cocktail wine. It's going to want food. But the aggressiveness of Barolo, I think, as you start to understand maceration times and all those other things that come into it during winemaking, you can have a Cascina Nuova, which is, I think that wine's beautiful in like the 3 to 7 year range, right? Like it's great on release. It will certainly develop in bottle. It could age well beyond that. That's not to say that it won't be a 15 year, or,
Yeah, Brahm, I wanted just to tell you that also the wines are more drinkable. Not became we changed something in the vinification, but what change is the viticulture aspect.
Right.
Because the wines are less tannic now because we follow the phenolic maturation very well of the grape.
So we're talking more in the field than in the cellar, right? More in the vineyard.
In the vineyard.
Yeah.
No, in past, for example, we talk about wines of 40 years ago of my father-in-law. As Brahm told, it is a little more tannic initially and then age well. But sometimes there are wines that are tannic initially and die tannic.
Right.
Don't have any evolution.
They don't, right.
Because the wines, at that time we are not so great viticulture as today. Now we have more equipments, we are more information. We became really great viticulture, and that get the possibility to have wine that are drinkable young, but aged so well.
I think you're getting more balance in the vineyard.
Yeah.
So that there's less manipulation in the winery,
Right.
almost, right?
Which is definitely not a trend, but a good thing, and
Yeah,
more
it's
people are
the way
doing
of
it.
the
You
world,
know,
right.
There's definitely, you can address this, Brahm. There's definitely been an uptick in the interest in Barolo. I mean, it's always been a great wine. It's always been a great food wine, but I think you're seeing more on lists. You know, in Italian restaurants, you know, you're seeing more on lists. You're seeing more in stores. You're seeing more people collecting it. Is that? Do you see that?
Yeah, for sure.
Why?
I think
Why is it having its moment? It's not its last moment, but why is it?
I think there's a number of reasons. So one, the wines have been world class for a very long time, and they age really well. Oftentimes, they've been for a very long time. Barolo and Barbaresco have been a great value compared to other parts of the world. Like you look at, sometimes you look at Bordeaux or Burgundy or other than kind of, let's say, more traditionally popular areas. Those wines can be very expensive, and when you're talking about Van de Garde or wine that's being held for a very long time. But I also think there's just been as we understand the subtleties of all these different crus and these different vineyard sites, we realize that not all Barolo are the same, right? Not all Barolo there's true site difference that can certainly trump winemaking here. And
Which Burgundy always carried that torch.
And real collectors or enthusiasts want to understand a sense of place, right? And I think that's the key. And not that Barolo has not always, or Barbaresco has not always had a sense of place, but I think it's becoming much more apparent how actually complex the area really is,
right,
as we start to understand these different site expressions.
What are we drinking right now? We're going to talk about wines at the end of the show, but we're drinking during the show. What's in our glass right now, Valter?
Now we have Barbaresco Bordini, single vineyard
So
from Neve.
Bordini is the vineyard?
Yeah, is the cru.
Is the cru.
Yeah.
It's Barbaresco.
Barbaresco is the wine.
The wine. A Nebbiolo grape. 2014.
14, a challenge vintage.
Challenging vintage?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. But
The story of how Valter got into Bordini is a great one, I think, because this is a site that most people probably haven't heard of, but I think it's a lovely site, and he has a good eye for it. And I think you want to tell the story about how you were able to bring Bordini in?
Yeah, since 2006, I started to produce this wine. I have a dream to produce also Barbaresco, because Barolo producer often don't want to produce Barbaresco because we are making the king of the wine. And
Right. It's a step down or something. Yeah. Screw that.
But I like Nebbiolo in their different expression. I like Gattinara, I like Gemme, I like Lessona. There are great wines that come from Nebbiolo, and I want to be a good ambassador of Barbaresco too, a good winemaker, because it's a challenge too for me.
Right.
For me, and I rent a small plot of a small vineyard, Barbaresco in Neve, because Neve represent for me a terroir a little bit more near to the elegance and the finesse, comparing also my Barolos. And from that time I started to produce 10,000 bottles Barbaresco. In the same way that you produce Barolo, I don't change the vinification or again, we need to have a beautiful grape for make great wine.
So you're saying you make Barbaresco the same way you make the Barolo?
Yeah, I just change a little bit of the time of aging because by law we can age less.
There are different restrictions and all of that.
Yeah.
So that's the Bordini.
Barbaresco is large barrel, 15 months in large barrel, and fermentation quite long, around 30 days on the skins.
Brahm, if people wanted to think about collecting or, if they keep 30, 40 bottles in the house and they
Yeah.
want to have 4, 5, 6, we're not talking collectors or big money guys.
Sure.
What's the best way, to get into this and taste the right wines?
Yeah, I would say if you think you like Barolo, it would be really good to buy, or think you like Nebbiolo, let's just start there,
Right.
To buy, let's say, 3 bottles of the same producer and let's say 5 or 6 different producers, right? So a case of wine from 4 or 5 different producers. And you drink a bottle of each, all side by side when you buy them, right? And then you put the other 2 bottles that are left of each one, somewhere that they're going to be okay storage-wise, so in a basement or wherever, in a wine fridge in your kitchen or whatever. And a year from now, you try the same thing, and you see what you liked. And then a year from then, you try the same thing with that last bottle, and you said, okay, what did I like about these wines? Okay, what did I not like? Where are my top 3, top 2, whatever it is? And then you go and you buy a case of that wine, or the
Now you're sure.
of that wine, and you know that you like that producer, you like that vineyard site. The vintage is certainly going to change, right, and have an impact. But then once you have that case, you can now decide, I can drink a bottle every year or 2 and decide where you like that wine in its arc, right? Because not everybody likes old wine. Sometimes there's
Right.
something really nice about a young, vibrant,
That's how you're going to
wine.
find out.
Yeah.
This episode is presented by Henry's Wine and Spirit, a go-to shop for anyone interested in natural wines and boutique spirits. There's a large selection of everything from orange wines, pet nats, and reds from around the world. Whether visiting the shop in person or online, looking for a gift for a loved one, or that everyday dependable bottle, you're sure to find lots of interesting wines at Henry's. There's free shipping on orders over $300 on the website henrys.nyc, and case discounts when you visit the store located in Bushwick. Cheers.
To get into that, are we buying Barolo?
Yeah.
To do what you're saying, requires a little investment, not crazy.
Sure.
We're talking Barolo, maybe Barbaresco, but do Barolo. What's somebody going to pay for a bottle that makes sense to hold it for a few years and evaluate it?
So I think the MSRP on the Bordini is somewhere around 40, I think.
Okay. So that's a
US
great
retail,
value.
Yeah, something like that.
That's a great
Very
value.
value. Yeah.
And that's a great bottle of wine. And so if it all depends on scale, right? So the Langhe, and understanding a little bit about wine law can help you in investing, right? So you have Langhe Nebbiolo, which is a category which is not Barolo, it's not Barbaresco, but some of the
Right.
the great producers will declassify or buy grapes that they want to use for those wines. And if you only can spend $20 a bottle, that's a great option for you, right? And then as you make a little bit more money, you can spend up a little bit.
That's a good intro into the region.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
frankly, for
But
me,
you answered the question right, because I'm talking about collecting.
Yeah.
Sort of the next level up.
collecting, it's really about producers, right? That's the thing for me that's really important is finding a producer that you really like and then buying into that producer, because a producer that you like is going to find a way to make great wine year in, year out. Even in a difficult vintage like 14,
Right.
people made great wine.
Right. The good producer will take a tough vintage, and Cogno certainly fits under
This is
that.
the vintage that
Yeah.
to show who is.
This
who
is the
makes
vintage
good
that gave you
wines.
those gray hairs over there on
working.
Yeah.
above your ear
Who's
and
doing
all
the
of that. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, I want to talk specifically about your wines. I want to taste some more wines. I want to subject you to our wine list, which is a bunch of questions we ask our guests. And then at the end, we'll take, the best couple of wines and we'll taste and evaluate them. We're talking to Brahm Callahan and Valter Fissore from Elvio Cogno. Brahm is with the Himmel Hospitality Group. You're listening to The Grape Nation. We'll be right back. All right, we're back. We're back with our guests, Valter Fissore from Elvio Cogno and Brahm Callahan from the Himmel Hospitality Group. Let's get specific now. Let's get into, we talked a little about Barolo and who you are. Let's talk about your wines.
Okay.
So I had mentioned earlier that you had the great opportunity to work side by side with your father-in-law, which I'm sure is very important to who you are and what you do wine-wise. When he left, was it Marcarini?
Yeah.
When he left Marcarini,
1990.
did he do anything drastically different or wanted to do things, at Cogno that he wasn't doing, or he took his knowledge base and applied it to the area?
No, he brought the experience of him in the new winery in Novello when we bought Cascina Nuova in Ravera. He brought his experience that was amazing. But what I can say that initially we need to study a little bit the difference that you find through Brunate Cru, for example, and Ravera. Because it is the magical aspect of the Langhe, of the Barolo area, that the different communes get different wines with different character, different notes, different flavors.
Right.
And initially we need to study a little bit how the Ravera can get the best wine. Also for him,
So it goes to site, right? Forget what you did. I'm at this site, and what do we do with this site, right?
Yeah.
Different time of the harvest, different climate condition, and also was a challenge for my father-in-law that have a great experience. In fact, after 10 years, we start to do a really great wine, in my opinion, in Ravera. But what is really important, don't forget, is the vision that my father-in-law had when he bought Ravera, because he knows perfectly the result that we can get there, because he born in Novello and know very well that place. So you don't spend money for buying a farm in a place not so great.
Yeah, I think understanding the fact that your father-in-law saw greatness in the place, but then needed to understand how to apply his experience to the vineyard, right? Because every vineyard is going to react differently
Right.
to certain situations, and all the history that he had with Brunate or Canubi or wherever, that those they applied but didn't really apply. So you kind of have to
Pivot.
a little bit.
Yeah. Have you made changes from what he's done? I mean, have you done things that you feel are better?
Yeah, of course. I changed a little bit, not too much in the style or in the vinification. What we changed that we adapted also our days with the new equipments. We have new technologies that help to do and become more traditional producer.
Right.
This is the key.
Yeah.
And then we, as told you before, that the viticultural aspect is became more and more focus on, and now we have wines, grape, very super mature, phenolic maturation well done, seeds brown, skins don't have too much green tannins, stem very brown too,
Right.
very not only sugar and acidity and pH analysis, but we taste the grape flavors.
All the
Now, what about practices? Let's start in the vineyard. Sustainability, organics. I mean, what can you do? What are you doing? What do you want to do?
Thank you, because I am quite reticent to talk about this argument, but because
Let it go.
we live in the middle of the vineyards. Brahm know very well my winery, and he can confirm what I say. I am organic already from more than 10 years, because I live in the middle of the vineyards. I want
Your kids are running around in there.
right.
Yeah.
I want to preserve my health first, than to have an opportunity to sell more wine.
And you want the soil in the vineyards to live on,
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, but no, I want to conclude this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. So it's important become organic because I feel in my heart this aspect. And then that help to do a better wine, I am so happy. In fact, I have seen that since I started to become organic, after 10 years, not immediately, that is very important, the vines start to work in another way, and the wines are becoming more fusion. You have the components is more harmonic.
Right.
And the wines became also more drinkable.
It's great to
Okay,
hear.
you like to have a diamond with many faces, and in the end you have a ball round. Understand what I mean?
Yep.
In your mouth.
What about, so take that into the cellar now. People, we all know people can be organic, sustainable, even biodynamic, and then they get into the cellar and do the cellar, I mean, low intervention. I mean, what are you doing in there?
Less possible.
Right.
We want to make very natural wines because now everybody talking about natural wines, but in the end, the wines are made with the grape and with
Right.
not the chemical.
Right.
We are viticultors. We are wine grower.
Your mindset
I am
carries
wine
through
grower,
into
and
this.
I am proud to be wine grower.
Right.
Don't use yeast. Don't use nothing. The chemical is stay outside of my wine.
That's nice to hear. Brahm, I've had the wines over and over. They have a crystalline purity. There's great acidity. There's a freshness to it. Do you think that's a trademark of Rivera and Cogno or the region? I mean, is that a descriptor for Barolos or good Barolos or?
So I would say that good Barolo is so elegant and light on its feet, while also still being incredibly powerful, right? That's the appeal of great Barolo or great Nebbiolo, right?
Right.
And that certainly has to do with site. You know, Rivera has some absolutely like prime real estate when it comes to having the ability to grow great Nebbiolo there. I think a lot of it has to do with winemaking or lack of winemaking, honestly, like
Right.
the ability to let the site speak through. Because that's really important, right? If you have a great site, and a lot of the clonal research and work that Valter has done in the vineyard is then be able to be expressed in the wines by being as minimalist as possible in the cellar, right? So that really he's there to guide the wines, but the expression comes from the place.
Right. Right. That's important. Let's talk about those wines specifically. So you make Barolo, Barbaresco, Barbera, Dolcetto, and we'll spend a minute at the end on, what is it, Nasetta, which is something that you kind of rein back in. This is a good time to maybe pour the next wine, and while you're telling me. So just quickly go through how many Barolos you make. You know, let's talk about them by name, and then, you know, the other bottlings. You know, what are the important bottlings?
Yeah. Before to talking about the single Barolo, I want to explain that we are a Barolo producer that make only one crew, that manage only one crew, is Rivera. But we produce 4 different Barolo that come from the same crew. So this is more Burgundy project.
So are those, the difference are sites?
Right.
Okay.
The single vineyards.
So everything's made in Rivera.
And not only,
Right.
also the clones. We're working on the clones.
Okay.
And that is more difficult because you need to put in evidence the characteristics of the clones and the single parcel. It's a more Burgundy project, and that get the possibility to show to our customer and the wine lovers that a contiguous vineyards make 2 different wine and 2 different results.
So the youngest Barolo, not by vintage, but since you made it,
Youngest
is what, Elena or?
No, the youngest is Cascina Nuova.
Cascina Nova is,
Barolo,
okay.
Yeah, it's 15 years old, the vines.
Then,
Ravera is the flagship Barolo, 70 years old.
okay.
Vines.
Pernice.
Then there's Pernice that is a tribute to Elvio Cogno because it is a vineyard that he told me that was the best seat of Ravera.
Okay.
And I bought it in 2005. And he told me, if you have a possibility to buy another vineyard placed by Bricco Pernice. And
then there's
and I bought in 2005 when I was already sick.
Then there's
and then Vigna Elena, Bricco Pernice has 50 years old. It's Lampia clone 100%. And the last one is Vigna Elena, planted in 1991. Rosé clone. This is very, very unique. It's a distinctive clone. Is a different biotype of Nebbiolo. Is a wine that nobody uses anymore until years ago. Now other producers start to produce again, and I am proud because I make a track about this grape, about these clones. When in the 90 years nobody wanted to plant, because the trend of the market was to produce powerful wine, overripe, body wines, bodybuilding wine, I know. And now this wine is completely opposite, elegance, finesse.
Nice.
Pinot Noir style, it's more of flowers notes.
And we tasted the Barbaresco. Do you make one Barbaresco, the Bordini?
Yeah, Bordini,
okay, so
yeah.
that's your Barbaresco.
Yeah.
And then you make a Barbera,
Two
Barberas?
Two Barbera. It's Barbera Bricco dei Merli and Barbera Prefilloxera.
Right.
This is another unique wine.
Okay.
Come from a vineyard so old, 120 years old.
And then you make a Dolcetto?
And Dolcetto because Dolcetto is always a wine in Elvio Cogno family important.
Okay, so it'll always be part of the...
Yeah, and Elvio Cogno always take care about the Dolcetto, not because... don't worry about it was cheaper wine. I produce Dolcetto because it's our Piedmont wine.
Right, it's important to you.
It's part of for our history, our tradition.
And then lastly, there's a white grape. White is not Brahm. White is not a prominent grape in Barolo.
Nascetta.
But you had a hand in not letting this grape disappear, right? Nascetta?
This is a
What's
huge
the
work
story?
behind this wine.
More of a passion project?
Absolutely.
Okay.
As all other wines, but
No, but-
Prefilloxera is passion. Nascetta probably is the most wine that show to everybody who is Elvio Cogno, who is Elvio Cogno winery, because we start to produce a wine that nobody knows. 1,000 bottles, 1994, is a grape was completely disappears, and they start to produce and became a DOC after 10 years, and now there are 40 producers that make Nascetta. So
Oh, really?
when we
Jesus.
start, nobody makes Nascetta, and it's a really great work. Don't look the money aspect. I look only the passion.
Yeah. It's not a get-rich scheme.
No,
I get that.
I don't become rich for the Nascetta, but I get the possibility to taste a very unique wine with great terroir.
What is the grape?
Nascetta.
Nascetta is the grape.
Right.
And is it blended or it's 100%
No, 100%
Nascetta?
Nascetta, yes.
Do you blend any of your wines?
No.
None. Okay.
All wine is 100% the same wine.
Because there are some Barolo makers
Great.
that'll take, some of the stuff and,
Yeah, I
blend
mean,
it.
you'll see, Gaia used to do that in his Barbaresco, where you put a little bit of Barbera in there. But
Viete.
legally you can't bottle it as Barolo or Barbaresco unless it's 100%
Right.
Nebbiolo.
Right. All right, so those are all the wines. Barolo leads the charge, and then you have the Barbaresco, the Barberas, the Dolcetto, and the Nascetta, which is an interesting story. So you've overseen significant wine programs. Were you always heavily locked into Barolo, or you've seen that? Is that a passion play of yours, Brahm, or because of the interest, the growth?
Yeah, I mean, I love fine wine to start, and have been, in
Well, I know you like
time,
fine
right?
wine. I'm asking you about Barolo.
Specific to Barolo, it's something that has always had a strong representation on our wine list, because I think, certainly depending on the restaurant business model, can be great pairings with food. But then also, one of the things that I think is really important is that a wine list always has to have places where there's a huge amount of value built in. And one of the things that I always felt was really important with Barolo for the most part, right, or Barbaresco for the most part, if it says it on the label, there's a certain assumed quality level, right? And if you're willing to work on some margins on our end to give a great bottle of wine for less money to our guests, that wine is going to over-deliver and help them come back to that area. So it's an area that I've always been very passionate about. I love the wines. Some of the first wines I started collecting were from Piedmont, and so was very passionate about giving that experience to our guests. And now, obviously, the awareness of the wines has just gotten exponentially better.
Does that push prices up a little?
In some places, yeah.
Do
for sure.
ratings and people talking about it?
Yeah, I mean, but it's the way of the world, right? I mean, milk is not the same price it was 10 years ago, nor is gas.
No.
So,
no. But if you get a rating in a publication or something, it seems to jack up the price, or if Soms are buying it up, there's less availability.
Yeah, it's always the struggle, especially as we globalize in the market. But there's always somebody new, right? I mean, at some point, Elvio Cogno was the new kid on the block. Right, and
relatively speaking,
right. I mean, not in reality of their experience or any of that, but like it was a new winery that was related to an older winery,
right?
That for a very long time had to, make sure that their reputation was built on every bottle. So there's always somebody new, and there's somebody's son or daughter that is going and doing something different, or maybe they're going to come back to to the fold of the family or whatever. But it's a landscape that changes, right? So there's always value to be found if you're going to look.
So, Valter, you're in town because of the wine experience, grand tasting.
Yeah.
And I saw on Alexandra's Instagram stories you were holding a Critics' Choice Award. So you've been recognized. I'm sure everyone didn't get one, right?
Yeah.
So that's congratulations to that.
Thank you so much.
That's nice to hear.
A very great time for me, because this is the first time that I participate in the wine experience, and
it is.
Yeah.
Pretty good luck, first time award. Good for you.
Yeah, and that is also a tribute to the work that we have done in the years, and quite deserve, I think. But
good for you.
When somebody else get an award, we feel very happy. Absolutely.
Good for you. Good for you. Good for Barolo, the region. Good awareness, good recognition. All right, we're going to move to a thing called the wine list. I do this with all my guests. I ask everyone 5 questions about their wine preferences. Don't dwell on it. Don't give me long answers. It's spontaneous. I like that. So here's the question, and Valter will go first, then Brahm, you answer. The first question is, what are you drinking now? And the context is, what are you trying? What are you tasting that's seasonal? What's in your fridge? I know we're drinking this now, but what are some of the things that you're trying or liking? Is there anything?
Apart this wine?
Besides this. You have to drink other stuff.
I like to try many wines, of course.
What do you like to try?
I love some white.
What kind?
I love Riesling from Germany.
Okay, so there you go. Give me one more. German Riesling.
And I like Alsace white wine.
Alsatian white wines. Okay, that's good.
And I like Bourgogne white.
Okay. All good ones.
And then red, many others.
Of course. What about you? Is there a region, a grape, something that's interesting you?
Yeah, no, I mean, so I'm certainly seasonal, but I now find that I pretty much drink champagne every day.
Why not?
Right?
Yeah.
I think, and a lot more white wine these days.
Has champagne on your list exponentially expanded in the last 5?
My personal list, or in the
No, restaurants too.
Partly because I like that.
Yeah, but that's who drives the cause.
We now have close to 200 different champagnes.
That didn't exist in some steakhouses or fine restaurants years ago. All right, good job on that. This is the goofiest question of the bunch, but I'm curious. Do you have a favorite wine and food pairing? Not something you necessarily eat every night, every month, but what's the perfect wine and food pairing for you?
Truffles.
Okay, truffles is a good answer for any of you.
No, truffle and the wine, I tell you.
Okay.
We talk about my wine.
Well, but truffles, what, on pasta?
No, pasta.
Terrine.
Okay.
Raviolo in pasta.
Okay.
Is the name. Cover of truffles and barbaresco.
Okay. Not Barolo?
Nuovo?
Not Barolo? Barbaresco?
Barbaresco, I tell.
Okay. All right. Give me, not what you think is the best, what you like or have or works for you.
Sure. So, I mean, I will say I also am a big fan of truffles, and there's a local pasta in Piedmont called Tarine that I love with Barolo and truffles. But probably one of my favorite pairings that I think is not talked about at all is Barolo Chinato with chocolate. So Barolo
Why
Chinato,
does it work?
Barolo Chinato is like a digestif, a local digestif there, and it with chocolate is maybe one of the most magical.
Take a second
pairings.
to tell me what it is. When you say a digestif, it's made
With herbs and spices. It's a
so it's a Nebbiolo grape.
It's Barolo that is aromatized, kind of like vermouth-ish.
They don't do anything to the wine. They just add aromatics or whatever.
And it's fortified too.
Okay.
Yeah.
What do they fortify it with?
Neutral grape spirit.
Okay. All right. So that's a first for the show.
It's an awesome pairing.
Okay.
It's such an eye-opening pairing when you have it with like good chocolate or like a chocolate dessert.
All right. The next question is your favorite wine restaurant or wine bar. Now that's tough. Well, how should we do this? Should we make you both answer in New York? Should we do hometown or anything? If you had to pick anywhere, a place that you go into that just has great wine service, people who know their stuff and enjoy it, is there anything locally?
It's a difficult question. There is a lot. I prefer don't answer about this question.
Okay, I mean, it can be exclusive sometimes. You get home and, Valter, why didn't you mention me, and, whatever.
There is many places that I like to be there.
At home?
No,
or
here. In New York.
Okay.
New York. We talk about New York, of course. In Piedmont, okay, it's more easy for me to answer.
Give me one great place in Piedmont for wine and food, not just food.
Wine and food, I think there is. I can say two.
Yeah, sure.
Completely different.
Yeah.
Okay, one is Il Tornavento in Treviso.
Okay.
And then another one in Serralunga is Ciccio Centro Storico.
Say that again slowly, because I post all this stuff for our listeners.
This is Il Tornavento.
Okay.
La Ciao del Tornavento.
Right.
Sorry. In Treviso is one in Barbaresco area, because the cellar is amazing and the food, both again. And another is this is a very one-star Michelin restaurant. Okay, and the other is a trattoria, very small place.
Casual.
In Serralunga, that called Ciccio Centro Storico.
Okay.
The Ciccio Centro.
It's pretty fantastic.
Is it?
It's underneath
Okay.
the church.
So there's another valley.
He's got amazing champagne.
Yeah.
He's just like salumi. It's his mom and him. Yeah. And I drank. I could tell you the last time I was there, I drank 89 Sir Winston Churchill from Paul Roger. I drank an 82 Valero from Vieri.
Okay.
And something else too. But
So he's got some interesting stuff.
Lovely little tutorial.
Now, I'll let you answer the question the way you want. So let's do two things. So if we're eating at a Himmel restaurant,
Sure.
do you have a favorite? Like my friend Hristo, who runs the wine program. Maria is, the flagship, but he goes, you know what? Come to Osteria Marini. That's more my soul. How do you answer that?
So I would say for me, they're all excellent. They all do different things, and they all actually have very different beverage programs too. But as far as like a wine and food place, the Grill 23 and Bar is like, it's just an unparalleled service experience, and the quality is fantastic. The wine list is unreal, and it's a happy place for me.
That's all you need to answer. All right, fourth out of the fifth question. Do you have a favorite all-time wine? Is there a wine that still resonates with you, that was just terrific? Is it an older wine? Is it a wine where the experience was great? What's a wine that's important to you that you've had in the past?
One of the wines that I remember.
And I know there's more than one, but just pull one out.
Okay, a wine that showed me a great power of the Nebbiolo is a wine that remains in my heart. There are two wines.
That's what I'm looking for.
One is Aldo Conterno Barolo Cicala 1988.
88?
88.
Was
and-
88 a good vintage year? It was,
Yeah,
okay.
absolutely. And another wine is Barolo Elvio Cogno Marcarini 64, Brunate.
So it was when Elvio was at Marcarini,
Yeah.
the 64.
64.
Okay, that's what I'm looking for. What about you? You've been around a decent amount of wine. You know,
more than my fair share. So one of the wines that got me serious about wine was a 91 Chave Hermitage. I knew a little bit about Burgundy and Bordeaux at that point, and really hadn't started exploring the Rhone, and drank a 91 Chave against two very serious producers, and it was like a mind-bending experience for me.
do you still have an affinity for Northern Rhone wines?
Yeah. No,
I mean, that's
I
a
have an
favorite.
affinity for Chave at this point.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right. Good answer on that. All right, here's the last question, and Brahm, you could probably answer it easily. But I ask my guests, recommend a wine for $15 to $20 American. Okay? And here's the setup, and I say it over and over. I have kids now, they're in their 20s, mid-late 20s. They can't show up at a party with a crappy wine for $8, $10, but they're not spending $30, $40. So if they go in with 15, 20, 21 bucks, 16, what kind of wine should they bring? You can give me a category like Muscadet. You can give me a maker. Well, I need a red from you, and I need a white,
A name.
or a grape or whatever. You know, you could say,
Brahm, you are easy for you.
Brahm, you go first.
Yeah.
You want to think?
You go for
you
no.
answer
He'll
for
take
me.
your lead.
Okay.
We'll help him. But Brahm, you should be able to handle this.
Yeah. So
Because you manage much more mine than me in terms of price
fair.
and
It's
everything. You
fair.
know.
It's totally fair. So I would say Chenin Blanc.
Chenin Blanc for the
Loire
white.
Valley. Yeah, like you can spend 15, 20 bucks and get a good or sometimes a great bottle of wine if you're willing to spend.
Can you think of a producer offhand?
Yeah, well, I mean, there's certainly plenty that are. I would say that the like benchmark producers there, you can spend $25 and get a benchmark producer. So like jump up to somebody like Francois Chedane or Huet and get some of their
You're killing it with those guys.
the
Yeah.
basic bottlings, right? And
Yeah.
and they're exponentially punching above their weight.
What about red?
For the red, it's certainly harder. I like Etna right now a lot. I think
Great value.
yeah, well, I think there's some very good Novello being made. So from Novello Mascalese from Etna, and there's a bunch of producers that are making high-end offerings, but there's also a lot of wine that's being produced in the, let's say, $15 to $25.
By those guys?
Some by those guys, but also others as well. And as the category picks up and they start to plant more there, and I think the wines are really, really very, I would say, consumer friendly, because they have a lot of, even though they're an old world wine, that they have a sense of place, but they have a lot of fruit.
Can you think of a maker or two?
Yeah, so the Altamora from, so it's bottled on, it's a Cusimano property. So the Cusimano wine.
Cusimano's the
which
winery.
make Novello, they make wine all over
Right.
Sicily, right? They make a lot of wine that from all these different places, but they have a property that's just in Etna, and the wines are awesome, and they're super reasonable, and they're like, a compelling sense of place there, so.
Good. Like I said earlier, we're going to post those answers. I have a database of the greatest people in wine and their selection, so it's always great to hear from you guys. All right, we're going to end the show with a segment we call the Weekly Wine Sip. That's when we taste a wine on air, spend a little more time with it, and evaluate it. Valter, I know we have 4 wines here. We drank 2. Of the last 2, pick one that we should really spend a couple of minutes evaluating. Which wine? Which one do you
Bricco
think?
Pernice and Vigna Elena. Both wines that show.
All right, so let's do the Pernice.
Pernice is 14 again.
So
Just
2014. Is this the current vintage?
Yeah, just released, yeah.
Okay. All right. So Brahm, help me evaluate this. Color-wise, typical color, is it lighter, darker?
Yeah, I mean, Nebbiolo, one of the things that I think people think that a darker a wine is, the stronger it is, but the reality is Nebbiolo is a thin, it's
Right.
a low pigmented varietal, so
Right.
it should be see-through, or low pigment, low color density.
But because of a challenging vintage year, the color is still in line with what it should be?
Yeah.
Yeah, because people that are Tuscan wine drinkers, Bordeaux drinkers, Cali Cab, they hear this as a fine wine, but the profile.
Yeah, and
they get thrown
color
off.
Really doesn't
Yeah.
equate to quality. It's
So how would you
color-
describe this color? It's
So ruby to garnet.
Ruby to garnet.
Yeah, you've got a ruby core with a little bit of garnet on the rim, just because it's spent time in barrel.
Go on the nose for me. What are some of the nose descriptors? Walter, what do you get on the nose?
Red cherry.
Red cherry.
Yeah.
It's also like very floral.
Floral, yeah.
Good aromatics on the
Yeah.
floral, red cherry.
The lilac, lavender, kind of really, but not chemical, not like
There is lavender in there.
but
It's
like
crazy.
fresh flower, right?
Yeah.
Let's go mouthfeel. 2 questions. What would you rate the typical mouthfeel of Barolos and then this? Is it a medium? Is it a medium plus?
They're
Is it
full-bodied wines.
Full-bodied.
They're full-bodied.
so
wines.
more than medium? Medium,
Yeah, I mean,
depending on the wine?
Taste the wine and see what your lips are trying to do. Like they're fighting to separate from your gums.
This is a medium plus.
And it's tannin.
This is
right?
not a medium. Yeah.
There's a lot of structure there.
A lot of structure, very mouth-filling and all of that. All right, does the palate replicate the nose in any ways? What do we get on the palate?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think the
Cherries?
Yeah, but it's also more herbal for me on the palate. There's more like anise and licorice, a little more truffly, kind of mushroomy too.
Yeah.
Black truffle too. a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's almost
Would
like
this be good with truffles, this wine?
No, there is black, not white.
Oh, yeah. Screw the buck.
only the Italians can really split hairs between white and black truffle. I'd be like, yes, I'll take both.
Both.
All right, listen, normally I have to wrap up the show, but I say screw it. We have one more bottle in front of us. Let's taste the last wine. What is that, the Elena?
Vignera Riserva
Okay.
2013.
Okay, so we had the 14, 2 14s, which you said is a trying vintage. 13 was a good vintage, right?
13 is a great vintage.
Great vintage.
Yeah.
Okay. So this is the
Riserva Vigna Elena Rosé clone is very unique. You feel a lot of very floral.
clone
wine.
is called what? Rosé?
Rosé.
Rosé, okay.
We have a little bit less color, but not too much.
The color on this you're saying is
Yeah.
a little less garnet and
yeah,
ruby,
yeah.
right?
Yeah,
Okay.
less density for sure.
How about on the nose? Are we getting into a totally different thing on this wine?
High toned for me. It's more lifted. It's like if you took that last wine and made it louder, almost as far as the intensity of it, right? But it's still elegant, right? That's the amazing
Yeah,
thing about it. It's
I
very
mean, all the
perfumed.
But when you say perfumed, you're picking up things. What are the perfumey things you're picking up?
It's that like soft flowers, but like this is more like roses.
Right.
It's like almost
The
a little
lavender
bit-
is not there from
it's
the
not
last
as
one.
pungent, but it's still there.
Definitely roses.
And I also think that obviously it's got more bottle age too, so it's a little more integrated too. There's a little more leather, tobacco.
The mouthfeel,
Tennis is smooth.
what do you think?
I think the wine is, the tannin and acid is a little bit more in balance right now. Does that make sense? The last wine, the tannin was a little more forward.
Yes.
In this wine, the tannin and acid are moving at the same pace.
Better balance, I agree with that. And on the palate, what are we getting? Are we getting things that do replicate the nose, or?
Yeah, I think, for me, there's like a chocolatey, like powdered chocolate, kind of almost like
Jesus,
mocha.
how do they come up with this stuff?
But also the dried fruits, like the dried cherries, a little bit of dried cranberry too.
So you have the red fruit, but more in a dry character.
Yeah.
Not the fresh,
Yeah,
juicy
it's
fruit.
not like it's not as ripe. I would say it's a little bit more like restrained.
Yes. All right. So what foods are good pairings with these wines?
For,
we talked
Brico
about.
Pernice or
Let's do each. We talked about how well Barolo's good food wine. On the Pernice, what?
Ravera for me is with meat is the best.
Okay. What kind of meats are we talking?
We're talking about
Steak?
Steak. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So good red meat.
Yeah.
Anything to add to
And,
that, Brahm?
The
Okay.
Barolo and steak is good by me.
Yeah.
Brico Pernice is I love with seasoned cheese.
Cheese.
Seasoned cheese. Brico
Okay.
Pernice is a little bit more power, a little more linear, and I need a little bit more fat cheese, for seasoned cheese.
Yeah, with some truffle in it.
Yeah.
The truffle cheese.
There you go.
No, without truffle. And then the Vigna Elena for me is a wine also you can drink without any food in front of your fireplace.
That's it. Just it's all about the wine and the company.
Yeah.
Forget the food. All right, that could go somewhere. I like that. And what's the first wine we drank?
The Bordini Barbaresco.
Yeah.
Bordini, we explained with wine. With
That's the one. Okay. All right. So, if you're confused at this point, I will post everything on our social media sites. I'll actually, Alex will remind me to take a picture, so when I get home, I won't forget everything, and I'll post our wine list answers. I will post the wines that we drank tonight, and that's a wrap. Before we close, let me just do a few notices. If you have a question, suggestion, wine happening, or event, hit me up at sam@thegrapenation.com. That's sam@thegrapenation.com. You can subscribe to the Grape Nation podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, Spotify, or wherever you get your pods. Follow us on Facebook at The Grape Nation, on Instagram at SBenRuby, and on Twitter at BenRuby. I know it's confusing, but everything's tied to the hashtag The Grape Nation. As I mentioned, we'll post Valter and Brahm's wine list, all those great answers. And for the weekly wine sip, I will list all the wines. If we want to find out more about Elvio Cogno wines, on social media or on the internet, where do we go? Website?
Yeah.
Do you have an Instagram page?
Yeah, I have Instagram page. I have.
It's at Elvio Cogno, right?
Yeah.
Is there an
Elvio.com.
underscore? Is it or? I'll post it.
Yeah.
I'll post it. And what about you? Do you post personally or?
We have a good team that posts.
Okay.
We are working well about that. I think
All right.
Everybody say Cogno is very active on the social. Yeah.
Well, it's kind of free media. You'd be crazy not to participate in it. Really. I mean, and it's all about content, and you have content. You're making wine in the field. You have stories to tell. I mean, it's a nice thing. Brahm, where can we follow you and the restaurants?
Sure. So my personal Instagram is at BRealSomm. So it's
BREAL?
Yeah.
SOMM?
Yeah.
BRealSomm, and that's your personal account?
Yeah, and then all the restaurants have their own individual Instagram, Facebook accounts, websites.
Okay.
So Grill 23 and Bar is the website, at Grill 23 and Bar. Harvest Cambridge, that's the website there. They have their own Instagram as well, post390restaurant.com, and then bistrodomidi.com, and then HudsonYardsGrill.com as well.
That's the New York location.
Yes, sir.
And if somebody's silly like me and doesn't remember that, if they went to Himmel Hospitality, is there a website that breaks all that?
If you search Himmel Hospitality, they'll all come up.
They'll come up and all that, just in case. But I think we'll post all of that too. All right, I want to thank our guests, Valter Fissore.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for sitting down, and Brahm Callahan, Master Sommelier. Thank you to our engineer, Jeet, and everyone at the Heritage Radio Network. I'm Sam Ben-Ruby, and you've been listening to The Grape Nation. The Grape Nation is powered by Simplecast. Thanks for listening to Heritage Radio Network, food radio supported by you. For our freshest content, subscribe to our newsletter. Enter your email at the bottom of our website, heritageradionetwork.org. Connect with us on Instagram and Twitter at heritage_radio. You can also find us at facebook.com/Heritage Radio Network. Heritage Radio Network is a nonprofit organization driving conversations to make the world a better, fairer, more delicious place. And we couldn't do it without support from listeners like you. Want to be part of the food world's most innovative community? Subscribe to the shows you like, tell your friends, and please join the HRN family by becoming a member. Just click on the beating heart at the top right of our homepage. And thanks for listening.